Professor Alan Wright tapped his control pad, and the classroom lights dimmed. A three-dimensional image of a planet appeared above the center table. It was blue and green, with swirling white clouds. Earth. Today we continue our study of Class 3 Death Worlds, he said to the 30 students seated in a circle around him. His voice was calm, but held a note of excitement. And the creatures that evolved on them. The classroom was silent. Every student beings from across the Galactic Federation stared at the rotating image of Earth. Some had extra eyes. Others had no eyes at all, but sensory organs that served the same purpose. A few had tentacles instead of fingers to take notes. One student in the back row was mostly made of gas contained in a special suit. Samantha Reeves sat quietly, trying not to draw attention to herself. She was the only human in the class. The only human in the entire academy, actually. Earth had joined the Federation just 3 years ago, and she was the first exchange student sent to learn at the prestigious Galactic Academy of Sciences. Death Worlds, continued Professor Wright, who was a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin and 4 arms, are planets where the environment itself is hostile to life. Yet life finds a way, doesn't it? And the creatures that evolve on such worlds. He paused, and his eyes, all 6 of them, seemed to look directly at Samantha. Well, they become quite remarkable. Samantha felt the other student's glance. Her way. She kept her face neutral and focused on her notes. She was used to being the odd one out. When your species comes from a planet where most other intelligent life in the galaxy would die within hours, you get used to being treated differently. The image of Earth disappeared, replaced by pictures of Earth animals. Lions, bears, sharks, Komodo dragons. Earth predators, said Professor Wright, evolved in an environment of constant competition. They had to be stronger, faster, and smarter than their prey. Look at the physical adaptations. Sharp teeth, powerful muscles, enhanced senses, protective. Coloration. A student near the front raised a limb. Professor, is it true that humans evolved as prey animals? I read that they were hunted by these creatures. Professor Wright looked at Samantha again. An excellent question, Lorne. Perhaps our Earth representative would like to address this? All eyes turned to Samantha. She took a deep breath. Humans evolved as both predator and prey, she said, keeping her voice steady. Early humans were hunted by larger predators, but we also hunted other animals for food. We're omnivores. We eat both plants and animals. A murmur went through the class. The idea of being both predator and prey seemed to disturb many of the students whose species had evolved as one or the other. Professor Wright nodded. Indeed. This dual evolutionary path may explain much about human physiology and psychology. They developed remarkable endurance, problem-solving abilities, and cooperative social structures. The professor tapped his pad again, and the images changed to show human activities. Running, climbing, swimming. Humans can survive in environments ranging from near freezing to desert heat. They can go days without water, weeks without food. Their bodies can heal from injuries that would be fatal to many species in this room. Samantha noticed a few students shift uncomfortably in their seats. And perhaps most remarkable, the professor continued, is their response to danger. Rather than a simple freeze response, humans experience what they call fight or flight, a complex hormonal reaction that prepares them to either confront a threat or escape from it. Another student, a small amphibious being named Zixtal, raised a webbed hand. But Professor, doesn't that make them unpredictable and potentially dangerous? Before the professor could answer, a voice from the back called out, That's why they shouldn't be in the Federation. Their world produced nothing but monsters, and they're the worst of all. The room went silent. Samantha felt her face grow hot, but she didn't turn around to see who had spoken. She didn't need to. It was Crowl, a student from Ventus Prime. As peaceful world where the dominant species had evolved without natural predators. Professor Wright's skin darkened, a sign of disapproval in his species. That will be enough, Crow. We are scientists here, not politicians. We study facts, not fears. He turned back to Zixtel. To answer your question, yes, the human stress response can make their reactions difficult for non-humans to predict. But remember that all intelligent species have evolved control mechanisms. Humans have developed complex social rules and moral systems to govern their instinctive responses. Samantha felt grateful for the professor's balanced answer. She looked around and caught Zixtal watching her with obvious curiosity. The amphibious student gave her what passed for a smile in their species, a quick ripple of color across the face membranes. When the class ended, most students hurried out, giving Samantha a wide berth. But Zixtal approached her desk. "Your species fascinates me," they said without preamble. "Would you mind if I asked you some questions sometime? For my research project?" Samantha smiled, surprised and pleased. "I'd be happy to help. It gets lonely being the only human here." Zixtal's skin rippled with blue and green patterns, their expression of excitement. "Wonderful. Perhaps we could meet in the dining hall later?" "Sure, that would be nice." As they walked toward the door together, Kral and two of his friends blocked their path. Consorting with the Deathworlder Zixtal, Kral asked. He was humanoid in shape, but with scaled skin and a ridge of spines down his back. "Aren't you afraid it might eat you?" Zixtal's colors shifted to an annoyed orange. "Don't be ridiculous, Kral." Samantha kept her face calm, despite the anger building inside her. A small part of her brain noted the physiological changes: increased heart rate, adrenaline release, muscles tensing. The very reaction Professor Wright had just described to the class. "I don't eat sentient beings," she said quietly, "and I have a name. It's Samantha." Kral's friends laughed, a hissing sound that set Samantha's teeth on edge. "It knows words," one of them mocked. Professor Wright's voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Kral and his friends stepped back. "No problem, Professor," Kral said. "Just discussing today's lesson about dangerous creatures." "Good," said Professor Wright. "Then you'll be interested in tomorrow's field trip, too. The biodome. We'll be observing live specimens of predator species from various worlds including Earth." He looked at Samantha. "Miss Reeves, I'd appreciate your insights during our visit. Your perspective as someone who has lived among Earth's wildlife will be valuable." Samantha nodded, though the thought of being put on display like one of the specimens made her uncomfortable. "Yes, Professor." As Kral and his friends left, Zixtal touched Samantha's arm gently with a webbed hand. "Don't mind them. They fear what they don't understand." "And they don't understand much," Samantha said with a small smile. Zixtal's skin rippled with patterns that Samantha recognized as laughter. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she might actually make a friend at the academy. But as they walked to their next classes, she couldn't help wondering how her classmates would react tomorrow, seeing Earth's predators up close. Would it make them fear her more? Or would it help them understand why humans had evolved the way they had, not as monsters, but as survivors in a world that had shaped them to endure? She would find out soon enough. The next day, Samantha joined her classmates outside the Academy's biodome. The massive structure gleamed in the morning light, its transparent panels revealing glimpses of different environments inside. Professor Wright stood at the entrance, checking names off his list as students arrived. "Remember," he said once everyone had gathered, "the biodome contains dangerous species. Stay with the group, behind the safety barriers at all times." The barriers are designed to keep the creatures in their habitats while allowing us to observe them. Samantha noticed several students glancing nervously at her, as if wondering whether she needed to be contained behind a barrier too. She pretended not to notice and stood beside Zixtal, who greeted her with a friendly ripple of colors across their face. "I couldn't sleep last night," Zixtal admitted. "I've never seen Earth predators before, except in images." "They're just animals," Samantha said. "They're not monsters." "I know," Zixtal said. "But even the plants on Earth can be dangerous, right? I read that some plants have poisons that can kill." Samantha nodded. "Earth shaped everything that lives. They're to survive, but that doesn't make them evil." Professor Wright opened the biodome doors. "We'll start with the exhibits from low-danger worlds, and work our way up to the Death World specimens. Stay together, please." The class moved through the biodome, passing through sections that recreated environments from various planets. They saw grazing animals from peaceful worlds, slow-moving predators from low-gravity planets, and aquatic hunters in large tanks. Samantha watched her classmates relax as they observed these familiar or non-threatening creatures. But she knew what was coming. The Earth section was at the far end of the biodome, in a special high-security area. When they reached the security checkpoint, Professor Wright paused. "Beyond this point are creatures from Class 3 Death Worlds. The safety protocols are stronger. Here, please do not make sudden movements or loud noises that might agitate the specimens." Kral snickered. "Does that apply to our own specimen too?" He whispered to his friends, loud enough for Samantha to hear. Professor Wright's skin darkened. "Kral, that's enough. One more comment like that, and you'll be writing a 10-page report on Earth biology instead of seeing it firsthand." They passed through the checkpoint. The temperature rose noticeably as they entered a section designed to mimic Earth's climate. Plants that Samantha recognized from home grew in carefully arranged patterns: oak trees, ferns, flowering bushes. For a moment, she felt a pang of homesickness. "Our first Earth predator," announced Professor Wright, stopping at a large enclosure. Behind a shimmer of energy that marked the barrier, a gray wolf paced back and forth. It paused, noticing the group, and stared at them with yellow eyes. Several students backed away despite the barrier. Samantha heard whispers of alarm. "The Earth wolf," Professor Wright explained, "is a pack predator. Not the largest or strongest of Earth's hunters, but very successful due to its social structure and intelligence." The wolf continued to watch them, and Samantha felt a strange connection to it. Another Earth native, far from home, being studied by aliens. They moved on to see other Earth predators. A mountain lion lounging on a rock, a small alligator half submerged in water, and a glass case containing several varieties of venomous snakes. "Earth has more venomous species than any other known world in the Federation," Professor Wright noted. "These represent just a small sample." Crow made a sound of disgust. "No wonder humans are so paranoid. Everything on their planet wants to kill them." For once, Samantha didn't mind Kral's comment. It was close to the truth. "That's part of why we developed our fight or flight response," she explained to the group. "When danger could come from anywhere, you need to react quickly." Professor Wright nodded approvingly. "Excellent point, Ms. Reeves. The relationship between environment and evolutionary adaptations is precisely what we're studying." As they continued through the Earth section, Samantha began to relax. Despite the initial tension, her classmates seemed genuinely interested in learning about Earth's wildlife. Even Kral had stopped making snide remarks and was watching the exhibits with fascination. Then the alarms began to blare. Red lights flashed throughout the biodome. Professor Wright's communication device buzzed urgently. His 6 eyes widened as he read the message. "Everyone, stay calm," he said, but his voice betrayed his fear. "There's been a containment breach in Section G. We need to evacuate immediately." "What's in Section G?" someone asked. "A Xantharian apex predator," the professor replied, his skin paling to a light blue. one of the most dangerous predators in the known galaxy. Panic spread through the group. The Xantharian was a legendary hunter from another death world, rumored to be even more lethal than Earth's predators. Its home planet had gravity 1.5 times that of most habitable worlds, making it incredibly strong in standard conditions. "Follow me to the emergency exit," Professor Wright ordered, trying to maintain control. "Stay together and move quickly but calmly." They had just started toward the exit when the biodome's internal doors sealed shut with a heavy thud. The professor's communication device buzzed again. "The biodome is in full lockdown," he announced, his voice shaking. "Standard procedure for a high-risk containment breach. Security teams are on their way, but we'll have to shelter in place until a crash from nearby cut him off." Something large had knocked over a display of earth plants, something moving toward them. "The barriers," Zixtel whispered. "Are they still working?" Professor Wright checked his control pad. Internal barriers are offline. Part of the lockdown protocol to prevent damage to the systems. His skin had gone almost white with fear. "Everyone behind me. Now." But no one moved. Samantha looked around and realized that her classmates had frozen in place. Even the professor seemed unable to do more than stare in the direction of the sounds, which were growing louder. She recognized what was happening. Most intelligent species in the galaxy evolved on safer worlds where freezing was the best response to danger. It allowed them to avoid detection by predators with vision based on movement. But that wouldn't work against a Xantharian, which could smell fear and detect body heat. Samantha felt her own body responding differently. Her heart rate increased. Her breathing quickened. Adrenaline flooded her system. Time seemed to slow down as her senses sharpened. Fight or flight. The human response to danger. And in that moment, as a massive shape crashed through the underbrush toward them, Samantha made her choice. She stepped forward, positioning herself between her frozen classmates and the approaching threat. The Xantharian burst into view. It was huge, at least twice Samantha's size, with 6 powerful limbs and a body covered in thick, dark plates like armor. Its head featured multiple eyes arranged in a circle, giving it full vision in all directions. Most frightening were its teeth, 3 rows of them in a mouth that could open wide enough to swallow Samantha's head whole. Time seemed to slow down for Samantha. Her mind became strangely clear, analyzing the situation with unusual precision. She could feel her body changing pupils, dilating to let in more light, muscles tensing, breathing and heart rate increasing to deliver more oxygen to her brain and muscles. The human stress response, working exactly as evolution had designed it. Behind her, she heard soft whimpers from her classmates. They remained frozen in place. Even Professor Wright stood motionless, his 6 eyes wide with terror. The Xantharian predator sniffed the air, its nostrils flaring. It could smell their fear. Its muscles tensed, preparing to charge. Samantha looked around quickly. There was a maintenance tool hanging on the wall nearby, something like a long metal rod with a hook at the end, probably used for working with the plants in the Earth exhibit. She lunged for it, grabbing it just as the Xantharian pounced. She dodged to the side, barely avoiding its massive jaws. The creature was faster than she expected. It spun around with surprising agility and faced her again, making a low, growling sound. "Everyone get back," Samantha shouted to her classmates. "Move toward the Wolf exhibit." Her voice seemed to break the spell of fear. Professor Wright blinked his 6 eyes and began herding the students backward. "Do as she says," he ordered, his voice shaking. The Xantharian lunged again. This time, Samantha swung the metal rod, striking one of its eyes. The creature roared in pain and anger. A yellowish fluid oozed from its injured eye. The barriers around the Earth exhibits might still be working. Samantha called out, They're on a separate system. She needed to buy her classmates time to reach safety. The Xantharian was focused on her now, seeing her as the primary threat. It circled her slowly, more cautious after being injured. Samantha remembered what she had learned about predators on Earth. Most would abandon a hunt if it became too difficult or dangerous. But she didn't know Xantharian predators followed the same rules. She kept the metal rod between herself and the creature, backing up slowly to draw it away from her retreating classmates. She could see Zixtal looking back at her, their skin pulsing with patterns of distress. "Go!" she shouted. "I'll be right behind you." The Xantharian charged again. This time Samantha wasn't quite fast enough. One of its clawed limbs caught. Her arm, tearing through her uniform and into her skin. Pain shot through her, but the adrenaline in her system dampened it immediately. She struck back, jamming the end of the rod into the soft area under the creature's jaw. It reared back, roaring. Samantha took the opportunity to run, sprinting toward where her classmates had gathered near the wolf exhibit. The wolf was watching the commotion, pacing back and forth in its enclosure. It seemed agitated by the presence of another predator. "The barrier is still active," Professor Wright confirmed as Samantha approached. He held up his control pad, showing a green light. "For this section." "Quickly inside." "How?" Samantha asked, breathing hard. "Won't that let the wolf out?" "There's a maintenance entrance," the professor explained, pointing to a small door at the side of the exhibit. "It has an airlock system. We can get in." Without releasing the wolf, Samantha glanced back. The Xantharian had recovered and was charging toward them, moving with frightening speed. "Go now," she ordered. "I'll keep it busy." As her classmates hurried to the maintenance door, Samantha faced the Xantharian again. Blood dripped from her injured arm, but she barely noticed. Her focus was complete. The creature was learning her movements now, anticipating her dodges. It feinted to one side, then struck from the other. Samantha barely escaped its jaws. She was tiring, while the Xantharian seemed tireless. She needed a new strategy. Looking around, she noticed the snake exhibit nearby. The glass cases contained some of Earth's most venomous reptiles. If she could somehow use them, no. Too risky. She had to find another way. The Xantharian lunged again. This time, Samantha didn't dodge. Instead, she dropped to the ground and rolled under the creature as it sailed over her. She jabbed upward with the metal rod, striking its soft underbelly. The predator crashed into a display of earth plants, sending dirt and vegetation flying. It struggled to its feet, seeming dazed by the impact. Samantha ran to the wolf exhibit. Her classmates were already inside, watching through the barrier with expressions of horror and amazement. Professor Wright held the maintenance door open for her. "Hurry," he called. Samantha sprinted the last few meters. Behind her, she heard the Xantharian recovering, its claws scrabbling on the floor as it prepared for another charge. She dove through the maintenance door, just as Professor Wright slammed it shut. The airlock system engaged with a hiss of air through the small window. In the door, she saw the Xantharian slam into it, its jaws snapping in frustration. Safe inside the wolf's enclosure, Samantha collapsed to her knees, breathing hard. The wolf watched her from a distance, curious but cautious. Her classmates stared at her with expressions she couldn't quite read. Fear? Awe? Disgust? Maybe all. 3. "You're bleeding," Zixtal said, approaching her slowly. Samantha looked down at her arm. Now that the immediate danger had passed, the pain was returning. The Xantharian's claws had left 3 deep gashes. "It's not too bad," she said, though she knew it would need medical attention soon. Professor Wright was already calling for help on his communication device. "Security teams are on their way," he announced. "They'll neutralize the Xantharian and get us out safely." Crowell was staring at Samantha with a strange expression. "You fought it," he said, his voice a mixture of fear and admiration. "You actually fought a Xantharian apex predator." "I didn't fight it," Samantha corrected him. "I distracted it so we could escape. There's a difference." "But you weren't afraid," another student said. Samantha laughed, a short, tired sound. "Of course I was afraid. Being afraid doesn't mean you can't act. That's what the fight or flight response is all about." They all fell silent, watching the Xantharian as it paced outside the barrier, still trying to find a way to reach them. Inside their protected space, the wolf had approached Samantha and was sniffing her curiously, perhaps recognizing something familiar in her scent. "It seems even Earth predators know their own kind," Crow muttered. Samantha was too tired to argue. But as she looked around at her classmates, she realized something had changed. They were no longer looking at her with simple fear or curiosity. Now they were looking at her with respect. 20 minutes later, security teams arrived at the biodome. They wore heavy protective gear and carried weapons designed to stun even the largest predators. With practiced efficiency, they neutralized the Xantharian predator, which collapsed to the ground, temporarily paralyzed. Once the creature was secured, the security team opened the wolf enclosure and escorted the students and Professor Wright to safety. Medical staff waited outside to treat any injuries. A doctor with 4 arms and green skin examined Samantha's wounded arm. "You're lucky," she said. "Xantharian claws often carry bacteria that are deadly to most species. Humans have strong immune systems," Samantha explained. "We evolved alongside many types of bacteria." The doctor nodded. "Still, I'll clean the wound and seal it. You should also take these antibiotics, just in case." While the doctor worked on her arm, Samantha noticed 2 security officers talking to Professor Wright. They kept glancing in her direction. After a few minutes, one of the officers approached her. "Ms. Reeves? I'm Officer Kell. Once the doctor has finished treating you, we'd like to ask you some questions about the incident." Samantha nodded. "Of course." The doctor finished applying a clear gel to Samantha's wounds. The pain disappeared immediately, and the edges of the cuts began to close. "Modern medicine is amazing," Samantha said. "On Earth, these would have needed stitches." The doctor smiled. "Come back tomorrow so I can check for infection. You can go with the officers now." Officer Kell led Samantha to a small room in the Academy's security wing. Inside, a recording device floated in the air, and another officer sat behind a desk. His uniform had more markings than Officer Kell's. He was probably a higher rank. "Please sit down, Miss Reeves," the senior officer said. "I'm Chief Officer. Jocks, we need to understand exactly what happened in the biodome." For the next hour, Samantha answered their questions. They wanted to know every detail: how she had reacted, what she had thought, why she had made each decision. They seemed particularly interested in how she had known to strike at the Xantharian's vulnerable spots. "I didn't know specifically," Samantha explained. "I just aimed for the eyes most creatures protect their sensory organs, and then I noticed. It reacted strongly when I hit under its jaw, so I targeted that area again." Chief Officer Jocks made notes on his pad. "And you've had no combat training?" "No, just basic self-defense classes, like most humans take. Your actions today were unusual," Officer Kell said. "Most beings faced with a Xantharian predator would not have been able to function, let alone fight back effectively." Samantha shrugged. It wasn't about fighting. It was about survival and protecting the others. Humans are good at that. The officers exchanged glances. "You understand that your actions have caused some concern among certain members of the Academy staff," Chief Jocks said carefully. "Concern? I helped save my classmates." "Yes, and that is commendable," Officer Kell said quickly. But the manner in which you did so has raised questions about the potential danger that humans might pose. Samantha stared at them in disbelief. You think I'm dangerous because I didn't freeze in terror like everyone else? Because I actually did something? Chief Jocks raised his hands in a calming gesture. Please understand our position. The Galactic Federation has limited experience with humans. Your species' ability to respond to threats with coordinated violence, even in self-defense, is unusual among intelligent beings. So it would have been better if I'd just let the Xantharian eat us all? Samantha felt anger rising in her chest. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Of course not, Officer Kell said. No one is suggesting that. We're simply trying to understand. Before Samantha could respond, there was a knock at the door. A staff member entered and whispered something to Chief Jocks. He nodded and turned back to Samantha. It seems the Academy Director wishes to speak with you. We'll continue this discussion later if necessary. Samantha was escorted to the Director's office, a large room at the top of the Academy's central tower. Director Venn was waiting for her, standing by a window that overlooked the entire campus. He was from a species Samantha had never seen before, tall and slender with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Ms. Reeves, he said, turning to greet her. Please, sit down. How is your arm? Healing, sir, Samantha said, taking a seat across from his desk. Good. The director sat down as well. I've reviewed the preliminary reports of the incident in the biodome. Your actions were quite remarkable. Thank you, sir. Samantha waited, unsure where this conversation was going. However, Director Venn continued, they have also caused some concern among the parents of several students. We've received formal complaints questioning the wisdom of having a forgive me, a potentially aggressive Deathworlder studying alongside their children. Samantha felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Are you going to send me back to Earth? The director's expression was unreadable. That is one option being discussed by the board, but I wanted to hear your perspective before any decisions are made. My perspective? Samantha tried to keep her voice steady. I saw a danger and I acted to protect myself and others. If that makes me dangerous in the eyes of the Federation, then maybe you don't understand humans at all. Perhaps we don't, the director agreed. Earth joined the Federation only recently. Your species is still something of a mystery to many of us. We're not a mystery. We're survivors. Earth tried to kill us for millions of years, so we learned to adapt. We learned to protect ourselves and each other. That doesn't make us monsters. Director Venn studied her for a long moment. No, it doesn't, he said finally. In fact, it makes you quite valuable in certain situations, as today demonstrated. He stood up and walked to the window again. I've also received messages from several students in your class. They wish to express their gratitude for your actions. Even young Crow, who I understand has been less than welcoming to you. Samantha was surprised. Crow? Yes, he was quite insistent that without your intervention, the situation would have ended tragically. The director turned back to face her. It seems you've made quite an impression. So what happens now? For now, you will return to your studies. The board will meet next week to discuss the situation more thoroughly. Until then, I suggest you rest and recover from your ordeal. As Samantha left the director's office, she felt confused. Would she be allowed to stay at the academy? Or would the fear of what she represented, a human from a death world, outweigh the fact that she had saved her classmates? In the residential wing, she found Zixtal waiting outside her door. There. Skin was pulsing with worried patterns. Are you okay? They asked as soon as they saw her. Everyone's talking about what happened. Some are saying you might be sent back to Earth. I don't know yet, Samantha admitted. The board is going to meet about it next week. Zixtal's skin darkened with anger. That's not fair. You saved. U.S. If you hadn't been there, double quotes. I know. Samantha felt suddenly tired. The adrenaline had worn off completely, leaving her drained. But I think they're afraid of what I did. Or maybe of what it means about humans. What does it mean about humans? Samantha thought for a moment. That we don't give up easily. That we fight for what matters. She smiled slightly. That death worlds make tough species. Zixtal's skin rippled with colors that Samantha had come to recognize as determination. Then we'll just have to make sure the board understands that those are good things. A week passed. Samantha returned to classes, but everything had changed. Students who had previously avoided her now greeted her in the hallways. Some even asked to sit with her at meals. Curious about Earth and humans. Craw, surprisingly, had become almost friendly. I still think your planet is terrifying, he told her one day after class. But maybe that's not a bad thing. It made you strong. Not everyone had changed their minds, though. Samantha noticed some students still kept their distance, watching her with wary eyes. And some of the professors seemed unsure how to treat her, as if they weren't certain whether she was a student or a dangerous specimen. The day before the board was scheduled to meet, Professor Wright asked Samantha to stay. After class, I wanted to apologize, he said when the other students had left. During the incident in the biodome, I was unable to protect the class. I froze, just like the others. That's not your fault, Samantha said. It's an instinctive response. For your species, perhaps. But it made me realize something important. The professor's skin rippled with thoughtful colors. I've been teaching about death worlds and the creatures they produce, but I never truly understood what that meant until I saw you face the Xantharian. He activated his display pad, and an image of Earth appeared above his desk. For years, I've taught that death worlds produce monsters, aggressive, dangerous species that evolve to survive in hostile environments. But now I see that's not the whole truth. Samantha waited, unsure where this was going. Death worlds don't just produce monsters, Professor Wright continued. They produce survivors. Beings who adapt, who develop remarkable abilities, who learn to protect not just themselves, but others as well. He looked at Samantha with all 6 of his eyes. I've spoken to the board on your behalf. I hope they will see what I now see. Next day, Samantha was called to the meeting room where the Academy board had gathered. 7 members sat at a long table with Director Venn at the center. They asked her to sit in a chair facing them. Ms. Reeves, Director Venn began, the board has reviewed all reports regarding the incident in the biodome. We have also considered statements from your classmates, Professor Wright, and the security team. Samantha sat straight, trying to appear calm despite her racing heart. The question before us is whether your presence at the Academy poses a risk to other students. Your actions during the crisis demonstrated capabilities that are unusual among our member species. You mean I fought back instead of freezing, Samantha said. That's not because I'm dangerous. It's because humans evolved differently. A board member with features like a large insect leaned forward. Yet that very difference is what concerns some parents. They fear that in a moment of anger or fear, a human might respond with violence, even against fellow students. That's not how it works, Samantha protested. We don't just attack anything that scares or annoys us. We have control over our reactions. Another board member spoke up. The incident reports suggest you displayed remarkable control. You used only the force necessary to distract the predator, not to kill it. You put yourself at risk to protect others. That's what humans do, Samantha said. Simply, we protect our own. Director Venn nodded slowly. And that is precisely the point we have been discussing. Your defensive capabilities, while potentially concerning in some contexts, were exactly what was needed in this crisis. The door to the meeting room opened, and to Samantha's surprise, Zixtal entered, followed by Krau and several other students from her class. "Excuse the interruption, Director," Zixtal said, their skin rippling with nervous patterns. "But we asked to be allowed to speak to the board before you made your decision." Director Venn looked surprised, but nodded. "Very well. Please proceed." Zixtal moved to stand beside Samantha. "We are here to support our classmate. Before the incident, many of us feared humans because we didn't understand them. We saw only the physical capabilities, the quick reactions, the potential for aggression." Krau stepped forward. "I was the worst. I called humans monsters. I thought they didn't belong in the Federation." He looked at Samantha. "I was wrong. When danger came, Samantha didn't attack us, she protected us. She risked her life for beings who had treated her poorly." Another student, a small floating creature Samantha recognized from her physics class, moved forward. "Our species evolved on worlds where cooperation was the key to survival. We developed different strengths: intelligence, empathy, communication. Humans evolved on a world where physical threats were constant, so they developed different strengths: courage, quick reactions, the ability to fight when necessary." "We're not asking you to ignore the differences," Zixtal continued. "We're asking you to recognize that diversity makes us stronger as a community. The Academy teaches us about different worlds and species so we can understand each other better. Sending Samantha away would teach us that difference is something to fear." The board members looked at each other, silent messages passing between them. Finally, Director Venn spoke. "Thank you for your input. It is most enlightening. Ms. Reeves, you and your classmates may wait outside while we complete our deliberations." 20 minutes later, they were called back in. Samantha stood alone before the board, her classmates watching from the back of the room. "Ms. Reeves," Director Venn said, "the board has reached a decision. You will be permitted to continue your studies at the Academy." Samantha felt relief wash over her. "Furthermore," the director continued, "we are implementing a new program. Beginning next semester, you will assist Professor Wright in teaching a special seminar on Deathworld adaptations, sharing the human perspective with students from across the Academy." "Thank you," Samantha said, her voice thick with emotion. "I won't let you down." "We believe you won't," Director Venn said. "You have taught us an important lesson. We have been studying Deathworld creatures as abstract subjects, categorizing them as dangerous or benign based on their physical capabilities. We failed to recognize that true understanding requires looking beyond appearances to see the complex adaptations that allow a species to thrive." As Samantha left the meeting with her classmates, Professor Wright was waiting in the hallway. "Congratulations," he said. "I look forward to our collaboration next semester." "What exactly will I be teaching?" Samantha asked. The professor's skin rippled with amused colors. "The truth about Deathworlders. That sometimes what looks like a monster is actually a protector. That strength can serve others, not just the self. That the most important adaptation any species can develop is the ability to care for those different from themselves." Walking back to her quarters with Zixtal and the others, Samantha felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, she didn't feel like a specimen being studied or a threat being contained. She felt like a student, a teacher, and a friend. The lesson had been about Deathworld monsters. But in learning about the human in their midst, her classmates had discovered something more important: that understanding was the greatest adaptation of all.